Christ is King. We've never held a platform without extending an invitation to people. Every time we draw the speakers, even if there are going to be 6 speakers, the first name that we always pencil down is his name. He will be given keynote address this afternoon, and he is His Excellency the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo. He had his education at the University of Lagos and the London School of Economics and Political Science, obtaining an LLB and LLM degrees respectively. He served as Special Advisor to the Attorney General of Nigeria from 1988 to 1992. He later became the Attorney General and Commissioner of Justice for Lagos State in 1999, reappointed in 2003. He has authored, co-authored, and edited several books and publications, including The Unification and Reform of the Nigerian Criminal Law and Procedure Codes, Law, Development and Administration, and Cross-Examination in Trials Lawyers' Most Potent Weapon. He's also a senior pastor with the Redeemed Church of God, married to Mrs. Bajo, and they are blessed with 3 children. Let us rise up for the welcome.
Honorable Minister, Mrs. Yemi Osinbajo, His Excellency Mr. Peter Obi, former Governor of Anambra State, our host, Pastor Oyemade, the convener, distinguished guests, panelists, ladies and gentlemen. First, let me say how very, very honored I am to be here again at the platform. This is a yearly event that I make a point of attending so long as I'm invited. And you are so very kindly invited me practically every time since 2009. I must say that it's been a very, very useful way of communicating views and ideas, and also getting very useful feedbacks. But I was a bit, I was also a bit taken aback by the idea of the national anthem, wherever I go, In fact, my first cousin at her naming ceremony of her baby insisted that the national anthem must be sung as soon as I walked into their home. So I think that is business of the national anthem, and we must find a way, of distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we live in one of the most important nations in the world by many standards. And a nation of 170 million of some of the smartest people on the face of the earth. Acres of arable land, natural resources of every kind, from precious metals to natural harbors and breathtaking coastlines. A strong and growing army of digital natives. We have everything, and our people are doing incredibly innovative things. For example, we are at the moment developing perhaps the most sophisticated animation technology expertise in Africa. A group of young people are doing that. Our music and entertainment industry is the fastest growing in the world. Nigerian writers have won every prize in literature, and from the Nobel Prize and just recently to the Pulitzer. I think it was Premium Times that won that. Only last year, a Nigerian girl won a gold medal at the Olympics. Last Saturday, a Nigerian boxer won
driving through industrialization, through small and medium-scale enterprises, and of course delivering an effective social investment program. That's just an addition. So we think that these four things, plus the social investment program, are absolutely important to do the trick. Let me just tell you some of the good news in some of these areas. Take agriculture. As part of our plan to fully implement the diversification of our economy, we expected at least three major results. The first is that we will not have to depend on one source of revenue. In the past few years, we depended solely on oil revenues, or most of the revenues from oil was used to import items which we could either make or grow. Food and refined petroleum products consumed most of our foreign exchange. So when in 2016 oil price crashed, and in our case we lost almost 60% of production because of the militancy in the Niger Delta. But we're hit by a triple crisis, or perhaps just a multiple crisis. First, exchange rate went up. Also, the price of imported food, and a lot of our food is also imported. Many factories did not access foreign exchange, so that meant higher prices of their products, and in some cases shutdowns and loss of jobs. So for us, focusing on agriculture was key. And there are two good reasons. Agriculture and the whole agro-allied value chain is clearly the fastest way of creating jobs and lifting millions out of poverty. The majority of Nigerians are actually poor subsistence farmers. And we decided that to move them out of poverty, if you provided the right inputs, especially seedlings and fertilizer, equipment also, they could actually multiply their yield and make more money. So through the CBN's Anchor Borrowers Program, we were able to provide financing for almost 200,000 farmers in the first place. And in almost all of the cases, local production has almost tripled. We are now producing close to 4 million tons of rice. We were importing about 580 tons in 2015. Or by 2016, we're importing about 10% of that, just about 58,000 tons. A major problem before now was being able to mill paddy, being able to mill the rice. And of course, there were very few mills, but now there are some private sector initiatives. There's a major one, which will come up by the end of the year, to mill about 1 million tons, 10 different plants. And the government itself is providing through cooperatives about 200 mills of various sizes. And this, of course, as I said, will be used by the cooperatives. Now, if all goes well, we should be producing all of our own rice by the end of 2018. And if we're able to do so, it means that a substantial part of the foreign exchange that we spend now importing rice will be saved. Now, how did this happen? How did this exactly, what happened to make this change? Improved rice seedlings was a particularly important thing. Actually giving farmers rice seedlings that were of much better quality than before. And then just teaching very simple farming practices that would actually increase the yield per acre. Both Kebbi State governments and the IITA and Jigawa State also had seed improvement programs that were extremely successful, and was using their seed improvement programs and were able to give the farmers the type of seeds that could really make a difference in improving their acreage. Also using our disaggregated soil maps. Before now, we assumed that we could just use the same fertilizer in every state for every type of soil. But the Ministry of Agriculture developed a soil map which showed that in different states and in different places, soil content is actually so different that you need different formulations of NPK or different formulations of fertilizers. And using that and applying the right type of fertilizers in different states, we're able to actually increase hectarage. So we have from 2 tons per hectare, which is the average that we used to produce, we are now doing 4.5 to 5 tons per hectare, and in some states 9 tons per hectare. So just improving farming practices, ensuring that we're able to get fertilizer, the right type of fertilizer to the places that they're going, and of course improve seedlings. We're able to do a lot more, especially moving lots of people out, lots of farmers out of poverty. Because as I said earlier, most farmers, of course, just
there to survive. Now, what we've also tried to do, especially in the area of wheat, is that we're trying to be self-sufficient in wheat production as well. Now, that hasn't been as successful as rice. The target is 2.5 million metric tons of wheat, but now we're doing 300,000. Now, we can do a lot better with improved seedlings again, improved wheat seedlings again, and we're working on developing the right type of seedlings and also importing the right types of seedlings for wheat production. But we think that we can hit our target of 2.5 million in another 18 months, assuming that we get the right seedlings. Sorghum, we are number 2 in the world today. We're the number 2 country producing sorghum. Maize is one where we would have done much, much better. But we've had 2 problems. One is the so-called armyworm, which destroyed a lot of plants, a lot of our maize plants across the country. But more importantly, we have simply not done enough in terms of producing wheat or allowing acreage for wheat and for maize. It just hasn't been enough. A lot of maize that should be grown in the southwest, very few people are growing maize in the southwest, of course. Few people are growing maize here in Lagos, very few are growing maize in many parts of the southwest, where you have a lot of poultry, by the way. And poultry, of course, suffers when you don't have enough maize. So we haven't done particularly well in maize. But grain production generally has gone up. Grain production across the country has gone up and has become extremely lucrative. We now have huge quantities of Nigerian grain moving especially to the northern borders of Nigeria, all the countries in the northern border. Now that itself has created some problems because it means that there is a shortage of grain locally because there's so much importation, there's so much export of Nigerian grain. If you look at some of the markets, the Dawano market in Kano, the Maitagiri market in Igawa, Lela, in Sokoto, and all of these markets, these are places where people come from the northern Africa, from the northern borders of Nigeria to buy Nigerian grain. Now, why has that become the case? Of course, with our currency being weak, it means that exports are actually cheaper, so we can actually export more. Now we're exporting more, and that's the whole idea anyway. That's one of the advantages of having currency that value, and you can actually export more. But when you're exporting more, you must of course produce more, especially because we need a lot of this for local production. The next phase of our agricultural push is in the area of plantations, tree crops, cocoa, cashew. We also, of course, sheep butter is also very, very popular. Coconut oil, by the way, is extremely expensive. It's even more expensive per liter than oil, than petroleum. So for those who want to become very wealthy, I think that coconut oil is somewhere you should be looking at. 1 liter of coconut oil is 7,000 naira. 1 liter. Now, if you consider that 1 liter of petrol, even refined, is about 145 naira, if you can somehow make coconut oil, you can really, really become very wealthy. Sesame seed, soya bean, pineapples, bananas, and of course cassava. Cassava, we are one of the largest producers of cassava in the world. But we are now, of course, looking at ethanol and starch, which have been very high demand, and we're looking at how to develop our capacity for processing cassava for ethanol and starch. This year, a major revolution took place in the production of fertilizers. Before now, we were importing most of our fertilizer, and we were paying somewhere in the order of about 10,000 and sometimes even higher, 12,000 naira for the fertilizer. But this year, things improved dramatically because the presidential initiative on fertilizer started with an attempt to resolve the problem once and for all. Part of what that presidential initiative did was to give a loan, a concessionary loan, for working capital to Nigerian-based blending plants. So Nigerian blending plants had a working capital loan so that they could begin to blend fertilizer. But the thing with fertilizer is that we have substantial part of all that is required, we have locally. But phosphate we have to import, and potash we have to import. So we struck a deal with the Moroccan. We now have a government-to-government deal with the Moroccan government, which also has some private sector facilitation. And we're importing phosphate directly from the Moroccan government and getting potash from Europe. We are now able to use our own blending plants to produce fertilizer at a very, very cheap rate. As a matter of fact, we are able to deliver fertilizer today to farmers at 5,500, almost half of what it used to be. More importantly, there's a whole industry around fertilizer production. It's a whole industry. We're now using warehouses in the seaports. We're able using rail transport more frequently now because we're able to move fertilizer around. And of course, there are several thousands of jobs being created just around this new fertilizer industry. We hope that we'll be able to produce about 1 million metric tons of fertilizer for the rainy season, for the rainy season planting period, and also another 500,000 for the dry season planting period. All of these are very great news around some of what we're seeing in agriculture. In stabilizing the macro economic environment, we focus on aligning our fiscal with monetary policy and nudging the central bank in the general direction of allowing the more market-determined exchange rate. We're also working on replacing some of the 41 items not valid for foreign exchange with a more trade policy-driven restrictions, taking into account those items that are required and locally unavailable, which we must, of course, continue to import. As of 2015, when we assumed office, 2/3 of the states have been owing salaries for months. We began a systematic scheme of support for the states in 3 phases, and only recently paid 25% of price stock reforms, a debt owed to states since 2005. All of these interventions were able to ensure that the states survive the recession and workers can continue to earn their pay and also support their families. Now, there are all manner of arguments around the support that the federal government has provided for the states. There are those who say that they shouldn't be supported at all. There are those who say that perhaps the support should come with some preconditions. What we try to do is to ensure that we have put in place some preconditions for providing the support. We believe, of course, that the states, and as we all know, the states constitute the nation. And once the states are disadvantaged fundamentally, one way or the other, as they were, when they simply didn't have the money to pay salaries, the whole economy suffers. And of course, that reflects on the performance of the entire economy. So we try very hard to ensure that the states meet some preconditions before some of the bailouts or some of the assistance that was given to the states. Inflation has slowed down, thankfully, and year on year, I think we're down by 1%. There are, of course, several issues, several reasons why we experience the type of inflation that we experience. Economists will say that largely that will cause push inflation on account of rising exchange rates and some of the other issues, some of the other problems that we've experienced. But we hope that we'll be able to it will slow down and reduce as we implement some of the other policies which we hope will be able to bring it down permanently. Interest rates have remained high, and of course there's a lot of criticism around that. But the truth of the matter, of course, is that we may not be able to do much about interest rates immediately. But we think that what we're trying to do at the moment, which is using a lot of the development funds or intervention funds in the critical sectors, is what might at least be mitigating for now. So we're trying to get intervention funds in agriculture through the BOA, intervention funds for small and medium-scale enterprises through BOI, that's the Bank of Industry. We also, of course, started the Development Bank of Nigeria, which is the main vehicle for intervention funds. And we think that at least we may be able to, in the critical sectors, be able to get cheap funds to those sectors of the economy that require. But bringing down the interest rates, of course, will involve our borrowing less from the domestic market. At the moment, we are borrowing substantially from the domestic market, and that will be one of the ways by which we can actually reduce interest rates. We've rationalized public expenditure by ensuring fiscal discipline. By rigorously ensuring that all workers, 60% or so of them at the moment, are registered on IPIS, which is our electronic payment platform. So we've been able to remove or reduce those workers, I think about 58,000 odd or so, have been taken out of the payroll. And we've saved close to 92 billion between January 2016 and April 2017. It's incredible how many ghosts you can actually have in any one country. By rationalizing overhead expenditure, we've saved substantial amounts on travel, sitting allowance, honorariums, and meals and refreshments. The focus on good governance and anti-corruption is a fundamental doctrine of our government. From the campaigns till now, the President repeatedly said that corruption is an existential problem for Nigeria. We die as a nation or corruption dies, essentially what he has said. Because corruption in our nation is systemic, cutting across society's major pillars and arms of government, it would have been naive to expect that it would be easy to deal with corruption. As a matter of fact, you will notice that corruption has been boldly fighting back through well-established, well-funded entities, and in some cases, even government institutions. But let me just say that we are determined and resolved to defend the nation systematically and deliberately against all forms of corruption. And the reason is because if there's any one issue that has continuously ensured that our country will not make the kind of progress that should make this corruption. Because corruption is not just stealing money, and that's a major part of it, but also leads to very bad decisions. Bad policy decisions are made on account of corruption. So somebody decides to build a huge, massive white elephant project rather than spend money on the things that are important drivers of the economy. So bad decisions are made, bad policies are made, all on account of corruption. So corruption is a major issue and a major issue for our economy. And we have no choice but to deal with it. In driving industrialization and focusing on medium and small-scale enterprises, our focus has largely been on creating an enabling environment for doing business in Nigeria. Now that is crucial. We need private capital to give our economy the push it needs. This is the abiding philosophy of our economic recovery and growth plan. There's no way that government funding or government financing by itself or government revenues by itself can ever do what we need to do with our economy. So it's very clear that we must ensure that we encourage private capital. So we need domestic, so we need a lot of domestic investments. Some of the investments that we have already, like for instance, we have a major refinery, private sector refinery coming on to 650,000 barrels of oil a day. Now that refinery is the largest single line refinery in the whole world. It's a private sector driven refinery. And the same company is doing a major fertilizer plant and also a subsea pipeline. All of the investment that one private sector company is doing is close to $12 billion. The kind of money that the private sector can get. Government struggles to get that kind of money. So we definitely need to
get the private sector involved in investing in Nigeria. And so we're trying to attract these huge investments wherever we can find them, huge investments in petrochemicals, in the oil sector. The oil sector, fortunately, things are looking up a bit more because we've been able to resolve the problems around the joint venture cash flows. So many of the oil majors are investing a bit more now. There are more rigs that are working than ever before, at least that in the past 18 months or so. So it's clear that we're gradually being able to attract some foreign investments and some investments into the local into the local economy. That policy, that's the economic recovery and growth plan, is what the president described as, in his budget speech, as growing what we eat and using what we make. In other words, ensuring that in our habits, we eat Nigerian food, we produce the food locally, we make Nigerian things, we buy what we make. In other words, made in Nigeria is it. And I think that one of the very critical things about that whole thing is that it enables us to create jobs locally. Of course, the moment you are importing things, we are creating jobs for other people. But if we make them locally, we create jobs locally. And that's, as I said, a major plan of our economic recovery and growth plan, being able to making our things locally. For instance, the president has directed that the army and several of our forces must patronize local boot makers. Those who make boots locally, those who make equipment locally, and we must patronize them. And so we're going to find, a lot of the, and not so long ago, we were in Aba looking at, we were there for MSME clinic, and the sheer number of Nigerians that are producing very, very good boots, military boots and military wear, including fatigues and all of that. And just we saw about 4 or 5 major users of these kinds of items. And so, of course, our new policy of made in Nigeria and buy Nigeria, they will definitely be able to do much more. And of course, will create more jobs. In terms of industrial infrastructure, we're focusing on improving existing special economic zones and establishing new ones. We have set aside 50 billion in the 2017 budget for the existing zones. Some of these existing zones are the Lekki Free Trade Zone, the Ogun-Guangdong Free Trade Zone, Igbesa, the Calabar Free Trade Zone, and the Kano Free Trade Zone. We're also setting up a few model zone sites, Ibom City and Deep Sea Port, and the Enyimba City in Aba, Abia State. China, Exim, and Afro-Exim have announced an initial financial commitment of $1 billion. That will be available for our pilots and for other special economic zones. The plan is to accelerate the implementation of our national industrial revolution plan through these special economic zones. The zones will focus on priority sectors to generate jobs, promote exports, and boost growth. And of course, of great skills. Our objective is to create at least 1 million jobs by 2020, just through our economic zones. On February 21st, 2017, the Presidential Enabling Environment Council, PEBEC, launched a 60-day national action plan. The President had earlier constituted a Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council and asked me to chair that council. The whole idea was for us to concentrate our efforts on making it easier to do business in Nigeria. Of course, you might know that we came a core 169 out of 190 countries in the ease of doing business scale that the World Bank does on a yearly basis. So clearly, there's something wrong with the way, there's a lot wrong with the way that that our environment is set up for doing business.
And lots of businesses, local businesses, small businesses, large businesses, have one thing or the other to complain about. And so the president decided that we had better just focus all our efforts. And so we set up this perfect. It's both private and public sector. And we, on a weekly basis, track progress on all of the different areas that we think need to be improved for ease of doing business. The plan is implemented by different government departments and also Lagos and Kano state governments. Lagos and Kano, of course, are our biggest business centers, and so they are part of the ease of doing business setup. And so what we try to do is look at several sectors, and the sectors are starting a business, dealing with construction permits, getting electricity, registering property, paying taxes, trading across borders, getting credit, and then entry and exit of people through our ports. Those are the key areas that we're focused on. On April 24th, a report card was issued by prophetic on our 60-day action plan. Our 60-day action plan was to look at these areas and see what improvements we could make in these areas. And our report card, we looked at all of the different areas and we were able to achieve quite a bit. As a matter of fact, the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria recently commended us because we gave ourselves 70% on our report card. Now that's not because it's us, but we think that we really did make some progress. But I'll just point out some of the areas where progress has been made. In starting a business, the Corporate Affairs Commission has implemented reforms that have made the process of business registration faster through automation. Now you can search free online for company names now. And application forms have been consolidated. In the past we used to have 7 application forms, and now they've been reduced to 1. So we reduce the application forms, and you can actually upload for each submission. I'm going to come and talk about that in a moment. Then we have the integrated CAC and FIRS portal for payment of stamp duties. So the revenue service is integrated with CAC, so you can pay through the portal. You can now pay your stamp duties for company registration through the portal. Now the CAC portal has been going down, as you can imagine, going down and up, sometimes it's down, sometimes it's working. And we then decided that we must migrate the portal and the servers to a private sector company. So the main one is our private sector media. And the main one promises that they'll be able to give the CAC 99% uptime within the next 30 days. So we're looking to main one being able to provide practically 100% uptime for the CAC. So we should expect seamless service from the Corporate Affairs Commission within the next 30 days. From our boards, the case, of course, this means how you come through Nigeria and leave Nigeria through our airports. Now that can be sometimes a challenging process. And of course, for many who have traveled through the Nigerian airports and all that, especially the Lagos airport, we've seen that a lot more can be done. It certainly can be improved. There is no reason why people should go through the kinds of problems that they go through just going through those airports. So what we've tried to do is a simplified visa on arrival process, especially for those who are coming to the country, and a consolidation of the immigration and customs forms into one single form of 15 questions. So you don't have the many forms anymore, just have one form when leaving the country. We've also tried to look at infrastructural improvements, especially at the Abuja airport, and we have tasked FAN to ensure that the Lagos airport works. We just said, look, you must, whatever it takes, whatever it's going to take, that airport must work. And I think that FAN have gotten the message, and they will make sure that the Lagos airport works. On trading across borders, some of the completed reforms
include, and this is using our seaports, trading through our seaports. Reduction in import documentation. We used to have 14 requirements for when you are bringing in goods. Now there are 8. Export documents have been reduced from 10 to 7. We now insist that imports, if you are importing goods, you must put them in pallets so that they're easier to inspect and they're not all over the place. Advanced cargo manifest, we now insist on advanced cargo manifest so that the manifest is with us ahead of time. And the scheduling of joint physical examination anchored by the Nigerian Customs Service. Of course, you know that before now, every service inspected differently. So the customs inspected, NDLA inspected, and this was inspected, and that one inspected. But now, it's a joint inspection with the customs service. The next phase of our reform is anchored on several pillars, but it includes trading within Nigeria, which will push initiatives aimed at improving business processes and regulations within Nigeria, and ease the movement of goods within the country. So we're focusing a great deal also on how easy it is to do business within Nigeria, especially trading within Nigeria. The Public Secretariat is holding a hackathon, bringing together computer programmers and other technology developers to develop an M&E solution that's a monitoring and evaluation solution for tracking reforms and getting public feedback. So we want to develop an app, and we're asking, computer programmers and other technology developers to participate in that hackathon so that we can get the best app that can enable the public to complain effectively about government agencies that are supposed to encourage business and make it easier to do business, but which are not doing so. So this app would enable members of the public to complain directly about government agencies that are not doing their work as they should. The app should also be capable of administering a public survey to ascertain those reforms that small and medium-scale businesses consider to be priorities. In addition, we've been conducting MSME clinics across the country. Many MSMEs, small and medium-scale companies, complain about the difficulties of getting help from government agencies responsible for one approval or the other. So we decided to launch the clinics, and we took the government agencies along to the various centers. We went to Aba, we went to Sokoto, and this week we're going to be in Jos, talking to the MSMEs, and we're taking all of these agencies along. So NAFDAC is with me on those trips, SON is with me on the trip, FIRS, everybody who is involved in one form of business approval or the other is on those trips. So the MSMEs get an opportunity to engage them directly. And in some cases, they're able to solve some problems. But in many other cases, at least they're able to get reasonable explanations as to what needs to be done. It has led to the establishment of offices of some of these government agencies in those locations, and to rejuvenate some of those offices that already exist in those locations. So the small businesses are better able to interrogate those processes and find out what it is that they themselves have been doing wrong. So now we expect that with this kind of engagement, NAFDAC will do a better job. We think that SON will do a better job. And of course, DOI also goes along with us on this trip. Growing the digital industry and innovation has been a priority for the government. And after the very successful ASO Villa Demo Day, we saw 30 of the best of over 4,000 innovators emerge. The presidency, in collaboration with the World Bank, through the GEM program, GEM, that's the GEM program, has, through a competitive process, selected 81 innovators who have now been given funds to establish their businesses. The World Bank set aside $756 million for the project. And we're also promoting innovation hubs in 6 geopolitical zones. There's nothing we can. It's very clear, and I think everyone agrees, that if there is a single reform that can fundamentally change the narrative of the Nigerian economy, it would be power.
providing power, providing regular power. And I think that despite all of the issues, one thing that's clear is that we're very focused on ensuring that we're able to provide adequate power. Now, there are many problems, many issues, but we're trying to deal with them as systematically as possible. Let me just explain what the problem is. Many of the companies, many of the private sector companies that invested in the power sector, many of them simply do not have the resources. They don't have the resources to continually invest and continue to, continue to service equipment, meter, and do other things. That's one part of the problem. Of course, government itself has been remiss in some of the obligations that it owes several of these private sector individuals. But by and large, a major problem has been that the private sector individuals have not been able to invest adequately especially in distribution, in metering, so that everybody has a meter and all of those. But then the problem is a little more complicated. They complain that the reason why they don't have enough money is because we don't have what is called a cost-reflective tariff. In other words, they are paying more for producing power than they are being paid by the consumers. Now, that has led to two problems. First is that gas, which of course, as you know, is the main feedstock for all of our thermal stations, and we have more thermal stations than any other type of source of power. Now, gas has to be paid for. So those who are producing the gas now find that they are owed large amounts of money because the generating companies are not able to pay them. Now, the generating companies complain that they are not able to pay because the distribution companies are not collecting enough money. Of course, the distribution companies say they are not collecting enough money because people are not paying enough. So we have the situation now where there is illiquidity in the chain. In other words, there isn't enough money to service the chain. So what the federal government has tried to do as a short-term measure is first to introduce some liquidity into that chain by what it calls a payment assurance scheme. The World Bank and the federal government have come together to see how they can make the value chain more liquid in the short term. In other words, ensure that there is payment for gas so that the gas producers are continually able to supply gas, and that those who are generating can supply to discos, and of course discos can collect what they can, and so the value chain continues to work. Now that is a facility which, a CBN facility for about 701 billion naira. And this is the first payment, I believe was made just this month. I believe that's when the first payment was made, this month. So the first payment has already been made, but we intend to do a reform of that sector. We think that we must do something about the sector as we use this payment assurance guarantee. We must at the same time reform the sector so that the sector is able to attract more investment and attract more capital. One of the key issues, and nobody likes to talk about it, is that there must be a cost-reflective tariff. Without a cost-reflective tariff, it will be impossible to sustain the power sector going forward. Refined petroleum products, as I close, refined petroleum products is crucial. At the moment, we spend over 30% of our foreign exchange on importing petroleum. Now, on importing refined petroleum products. Now that, of course, doesn't make sense, because why should a country that has petrol and so much of it not be able to refine its own petroleum products? The reason, of course, as you know, is that our refineries have been down for a long time. So what we're doing is trying to ensure that we bring in private capital into refineries so that more private people are building refineries. I mentioned about the Dangote refinery earlier. But then there are also other private sector initiatives in refinery. We have an arrangement called co-location. Some private sector investors are putting in their own refineries in the same locations, sharing facilities to the existing government refineries.
And we think that that's a very quick way of getting and refining up. Our plan is that by 2018 we will be at least producing between 60 and 70% of all our petroleum needs and reducing as we go along. So we hope that we'll be able to solve some as things go on. Finally, let me say again that we live in a great country. You and I are at a perfect moment in history. The opportunities are limitless, and added to that, we have easily some of the best talents, some of the best people anywhere in the world. Our population is young and vibrant, and they are bolder and more creative, more entrepreneurial than the youth of any other country in our region. We have competed and beaten the best in the world. So what do we have to fear? What do we have to worry about? I very strongly believe that this generation, especially of young people, must not allow the failures of the past to hold it down or become an excuse for your own failure. Every generation has a responsibility to take life opportunities and challenges as they find them and go ahead and do great things. So you here are no longer leaders of the future, because the future is already here. Thank you very much.